Welcome to the Hmong Women podcast. This is our Dear Hmong Woman submission segment. Thank you so much for trusting us with your submission. And you can also share a dilemma or share your story. I'm Ariel.
I'm Dochi.
And I'm Emily.
All right, let's get this started. So this particular story is submitted by someone whose pronouns are she, her. Her age is 23 and she lives in Minnesota. Hey girls, I was listening to your episode about grooming behavior in the Hmong community, how it's tied to a man's ego and how men must hold other men accountable for bad behavior. It made me think about an experience I had this year in 2024, and I wanted to share because it was wild to hear this in person. I was helping out my mom's side of the family, but there wasn't much to do since a lot of the food was mainly catered. People were scattered throughout the inside and outside of the home. I was sitting in the garage with some ladies and a small group of men. Among the small group of men was my uncle, and he was talking about work with another uncle. This turned into a finance conversation, and soon the rest of the men in the garage also joined in. At some point, they began talking about how to save money in stocks. This was something that sounded interesting to me, so I listened in while scrolling on my phone, but ready to take mental notes if it was useful. There wasn't any useful information. I guess since they were discussing work and finance, the conversation branched off into talking about women working and how women in the US are so independent. But the way a woman being independent was discussed, insinuated to me. But the way a woman being independent was just being discussed was insinuated to me that this was bad and a turn off. One of the guys then said, and I quote word for word, women don't have as many rights as they think they do. When I tell y'all the way alarm bells and red flags were going off in my head, but I also was so surprised at how open this guy was bringing this up and in front of women. And he kept going. I don't remember word for word what the other guys were saying in response to this, but I do remember the guys agreeing by nodding or going, yep. The same guy then tried to somehow explain his take with an example by saying, right, because men don't have rights to give birth, What? As if men would actually want that right? The same guy then said, feminism was created by the man to control the woman. And then I had enough and started to tune out as these guys were ridiculous. To tune out this guy's ridiculous takes because what the heck? Laughing emoji. The defiant older daughter Gen Z in me thought to say something, but then I thought about how the way this discussion was going, that they were not talking to learn. They were talking just to talk and validate each other's egos and horrible patriarchal takes. I decided to physically remove myself instead and left the garage. At the same time, another woman also got up and left like I did. I don't know if she left to get away from this discussion too. Later on, the same group of men were talking about the mainland girls and older aunties who were like, oh, y'all were not ready for that. Those girls are too smart for you. And then I learned what passport bros were. Honestly, I think it's very lame, and people who travel to date or go to the mainland for women need to do some self-work. Looking back now, I really wish I had something. I wish I had said something. Really make them think and reflect, but I'm still unsure. My words may not have as much value in their minds based on how they were talking about women. It's ironic that there is this kind of mindset towards women, yet men are not typically single by personal choice and still seek out women. I get that the Hmong culture has a patriarchal system and beliefs, but it was crazy to experience this in real time with this guy who kept going, and he got more and more confident after his fellow men validated his takes. I guess men really do say and do things for other men's validation. Side note, these men were 27 plus age-wise, full-grown adults, and in 2024? What are your thoughts, and should I have said something?
I don't know if I would have had the same amount of patience to have sat there that long. I probably would have left a lot sooner, so I probably would have never heard the end of that conversation. I had to really, so growing up, and I had to really learn how to pick and choose my battles. And I love that you're conscious of they're not talking to learn. They're just talking to talk to validate one another's feelings, and it's not going to go anywhere. And I think that was one of the biggest points. And even if you said something, I personally don't feel like it's actually going to sit in their brains. And I've been in these situations before too, where I always think about should I have said something, would that have changed anything? But I really just go with how I'm feeling. I don't feel like I'm always capable of taking on a battle. And it counts on who I'm talking to, you know, what the situation is. Either way, I don't think you have anything to be responsible here for. I think the buddies around him should have said something. They should have spoken up and been like, that's a crazy thought you had, and let's just leave it there, buddy. Like, keep that to yourself. Nobody here agrees. And because they already feel that way, I'm assuming that if you said something, he is probably just going to take it out on you. He has a negative mindset on a view of what, you know, a woman is. And he's her uncle. Is he married?
Yeah, I mean, when I read this, my first thought was, yeah, I'm someone who does like to have these conversations. But the first thing that came to my mind, especially for other people, is I'm okay with wasting my energy on that because I have plenty of energy with that. But is it worth your energy? Is it something that you want to spend time on? I know my sisters don't do that because it's not worth their time. And they don't want to use up their thinking space to have that kind of conversation with people. And secondly, if they do have wives or if they have women in their lives, is that how they think of the women in their lives? And if they do, that's actually really disappointing. I know that even though I'm not close with my brothers, that they don't think that way of the women in their lives. They know that we are independent, not because of we think that we're better than men. They know that we're independent because we choose to be, and that's our choice. And they aren't, you know, threatened by that. And it's just really interesting that they had that conversation. So I wouldn't beat myself up about, if I were you, about not saying anything, because again, you have to think about what's worth your time, what's worth your energy. Some things, and you have to think about time and place too, right? Is that the place to have had that conversation with them? You saw them for who they are. And I think that going forward, if you feel like you have the energy to call them out on it, you definitely can. But in that moment, I think you did what was appropriate for the time and place. It sounds like it was a family gathering.
I mean, I don't really have much to add. I think you said it perfectly. I have it written here. If it's worth your energy, you should say something.
Yeah.
But it's true, though. It's true, though.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't really have much to add, but you really have to determine if it's worth your energy, honestly, because if it's someone you respect and if you think you can have a mature and educated conversation with them, then I think you should. But I think you're right in thinking that you might be wasting your time and your breath because it might not be worth trying to change someone's mind if they'll never be able to be persuaded in that way anyway. So I feel like if it's worth your energy and you both are mature, you should say something. But I feel like, back to Dochi's point, I think it's also the responsibility of men to get involved in these conversations, right? Because sometimes I do feel like women can never win in this society because men are constantly complaining about women. And men wonder why some women aren't interested in them. It's because we witness and we see these type of conversations happening and no one's doing anything about it. So it's a really sad situation. When I was reading this, I was literally thinking to myself, like, I've never been in situations like that, but I've heard of it through, like, you know, closed doors and like just at weddings and inappropriate places where women are constantly being degraded and we're constantly being put down. And I mean, one truth to this is that women are becoming more independent. And I think that's the sad part, is that instead of looking at that in a positive light, we're taking that and being like, oh, well, she's not truly independent. I mean, I just think that's so, like, pessimistic. And I think it's really worrisome that people are still thinking this way. But yeah, back to what these ladies have said. I think if it's worth your energy, do it. But if not, that's okay.
Yeah. And it's just like, I think what I said before in a previous episode and what these two ladies said, right? The call needs to come within the house. They need to call each other out in order to be able to have these conversations. But also, I think another way to think about it too is, and it's sad that we have to use these examples, but like, if that was another man saying that about your daughter, would you be okay with that? It's just disappointing to know that he thinks that way about women in his life. And, you know, like you said here, it's 2024 and they're talking that way. It's 2024 and Roe v. Wade was overturned. Chevron was just overturned. They're looking at, you know, overturning a lot of other things that take away the rights of women. So I think that we are seeing just not a shift, but I think just the fact that people are more bold about their beliefs, and women being able to have their ability to control their own lives. So
Yeah, I think just as you said, it's like, it's sad that we're this far along, and you would think that knowing history as it is, people would want to progress forward, but instead it's like now they're just more comfortable being blatantly sexist and just outwardly being like what did you say here? It's crazy. Feminism was created by a man to control the woman, and because, right, like, men don't have rights to give birth. What is that even supposed to mean?
Like, do you want to be given the right to give birth? I'm confused.
I'm pretty sure women would love it if men gave birth.
Yeah.
I'm just always curious about how does a woman's independence, why is that so threatening to you? Mm-hmm. Like, as if you are a strong, independent, comfortable man and you can provide and do all these things that you think that a man should do, does a confident and also independent woman living her life, I just truly want to figure out, like, where's that association? What about her doing what she's doing is so, I don't know, threatening to what you're doing in your life that you have to go about it this way? Like, that we don't have as much rights as what? As we think we do?
All right. Well, thanks for submitting this story. We hope that you were able to relate to this, or better yet, if you have anything else to add, feel free to add it into the comments below. As we like to remind you, this is a bit of a newer segment and we're slowly getting through the episodes. But if you'd like to submit your own submission, your own dilemma, or your own story, feel free to do so at our link tree at the bottom. There's a Google form. But thanks so much for tuning in. We appreciate you.